Hello, salam ጤና ይስጥልኝ እንዴት ናችሁ? Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching us from. Thank you for joining us today on this important symposium and dialogue. And we're here to attend Symposium on Ethiopian Media for Peace. And thank you for joining us. This is the first of the 4 series. We're going to have it on 4 Saturdays. So this is the first one, and this particular one focuses on effects of hate speech and disinformation on intergroup conflicts. It's a timely topic and also a very important one, especially during this time when our country, Ethiopia, is going through some turmoil. And particularly traditional media and social media are playing a vital role in the dialogue and this discussion. So that's why we're bringing it here to this platform. And this symposium is brought to you by Peace and Development Center International, Ethiopia, and also Ethiopian Media Council. And the whole online event is organized by Flawless Events. I am Meti Shwaye Yilma, CVO and producer at Queendom, and I will be moderating the symposium today and for the coming 3 sessions. So we'll be having a very interesting dialogue, we believe, and we highly encourage you to engage, to write down your questions. So just few housekeeping items for you. Those of you participating on social platform, on the app or on the web version, you can ask questions. You can also export your discussions on your social media. This is a continuous program. So for the coming 4 weeks, you can continue discussing, you can ask questions, you can engage with other participants. As I said, you can export it to your social media. And well, sadly for the YouTube viewers, you can only watch, but for those who are on social, on the platform, on the app, you can also answer the polls. We're going to be running polls today and on the consecutive sessions. And this will help us gauge where you are, your understanding, particularly those polling questions that come before a particular presentation and after will help us see how you are going through this process. We are having it in 4 sessions because we know that in one session nothing can happen. Not many people can see a clear picture. So we want us to have a better understanding of media and peace. So we want us to go through it. If others cannot join for the session, please share it on your social media so that more people will come and more voices will take part in this dialogue. Today, let me just give you the lineup of our speakers. We're having Professor Ephraim Isaac. We'll have Ato Amara Aragawi, Dr. Abdi Zanebe. We'll also have a performance by Munit Mesfin, and we'll have a keynote by Mark Thompson. And after that, we'll open the platform for question and answer and discussion. At the end of each session, we will have time to reflect so that we will see how much understanding and how much information we're accumulating from the sessions. Okay, so now let's start with the first poll questions, and we will have few seconds for you to answer. Unfortunately, those on YouTube can't, but on social you can answer it. So the first question is, let's put it on the screen. And the first question is, what is your primary source of information/news? And on the screen, on the platform, you can click on your answer. So is it traditional government media? Or the second one is traditional private media houses. The third one is international media houses. And the fourth one is social media influencers. And the fifth one is friends and family. So we have examples for each, and so you can see. And let's give you a few seconds to click. So on the platform, you can go and click on the question and we'll have the answer right now. Okay. Okay, so go to polling on the platform. That's on your left-hand side. On the platform, you will find the polling, and from that, you can answer the questions. For YouTube, you can watch it, but you cannot participate. But while you're on it, please go on your social medias. Whenever you get an opportunity, you can tweet it, post it on your Facebook so that others can engage not only on this, but on the upcoming sessions. So yeah, on the platform, go to polling. So this particular session is on the effect of hate speech and disinformation for intergroup conflict. And we'll have, as I said, speakers for that. Okay. Okay, so click on live stream. Yes, on the platform. So click on live stream and click on polling. You will find it there. Okay. All right. You know, this online platforms are interesting because we're learning every day. We are on them. So yeah, if you are on social, go on live stream. Okay, good. The answers are coming. Great. Let's see. Yes. All right, so let's see. The answers are coming. Yep, so far we're having, okay, so the first one is traditional government media houses, the second, traditional private media houses, the third, international media houses, the fourth, social media influencers, and the fifth, friends and family. So you can click on the polls. The answers are coming to us. Yes, we're having, yeah, the answers are coming. Interesting. For now, we're having more on, okay, it's changing, but it's, yeah, it's interesting to see your answers on this. Okay. Great. Okay, so 6.7% say traditional government media houses. 33.3% say traditional private media houses such as EBS, The Reporter, Arts TV, etc. 26.7% say international media houses like CNN, BBC, The New York Times, Al Jazeera, AP, and etc. 26.7% say social media influencers in chat rooms, YouTube news platforms, influential individuals and organizations, and like that. And 6.7% say friends and family. So amongst you, the most of you are getting it. Oh, now we're switching to social media influencers. They get 33.3%. Yeah. And on second is traditional private media houses like EBS, The Reporter, Arts, and etc. 22.2% from international media houses like CNN, BBC, The New York Times, Al Jazeera, AP, and etc. Okay, good. So yeah, the leading media, the leading news and information source for those of you who are on this platform on social. By no means this is a complete survey. This is only by people who are participating on social. So yes, that is the answer for now. And we'll be having another poll later on, so get ready. Now let's go to our first speaker. And most of you, I believe, know our first speaker, and that is Professor Ephraim Yitzhak. Professor Ephraim Yitzhak is the founder and international chairman of the board of Peace and Development Center that has been very successful in promoting international eldership and peace in the Horn of Africa. He wrote so many books. You can go to our platform, the social platform, and on the speakers section on your left side, you'll find it, and click on it and click on Professor Ephraim Isaac. You'll find his works and his biography on it. He's been advocating for peace for a long time, and today he will be introducing IPDC, that's the International Peace and Development Center, and he will also tell us about the price of peace, the need to come together to fight poverty and other things that hold us back, and why peace is important to do this. Okay. So we have here Professor Ephraim. For those of you who are tweeting, posting on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube, please use #MediaForPeace so that others can join the conversation. Media for Peace is the hashtag for this. So now, without further ado, please help me in welcoming Professor Ephraim Isaac, and he will be telling us about the price of peace. That's why we're here. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you very much, my sister Matasebia. Before I speak on behalf of the Peace and Development Center International, I would like to read a statement regarding the present events in Ethiopia. Members of the Peace and Development Center International are shocked, saddened by the bloody conflict that has erupted in Ethiopia this week. It's tragic that we pour our resources into weapons of death and destruction instead of spending them on fighting against our true enemies, poverty, disease, and illiteracy. The people of Ethiopia are hungry for peace and food. We mourn for our fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters who are now directly exposed to death and destruction. We call upon our authorities to cease the fighting immediately without any precondition and stop the looming humanitarian crisis. Amen. Well, thank you once again for allowing me to say a few words about especially the role of media in promoting peace and avoiding hate language. Before I speak also, let me say I'm very honored to be on this forum with Mr. Mark Thompson. He will be duly introduced, so I don't introduce him. He inspired me very much by the book he wrote called Enough Said, What's Gone Wrong with the Language of Politics, about political rhetoric. And I read it, and that's why I was very, very happy that he had agreed to be with us. So now, my dear brothers and sisters, what I'd like to do is not to give a talk, but I want to write a personal letter to our media people, a friendly letter. Dear brothers and sisters, beloved people of the media, I extend to you and your families my sincere greetings and prayers for health and strength. I pray for peace and reconciliation in our beloved homeland. Please allow me to write you this respectful letter, my media brothers and sisters. I express to you my deep appreciation for serving our country and people with important timely information. By doing so, you warn us against pandemic disease and other dangers, fire, similar matters. You create for us forums for discussion of important issues. You serve us as watchdog against corruption in business, politics, academia, and other institutions. Thank you for all of this. My dear brothers and sisters, you also provide us with many important information, thereby teaching us and educating us, entertaining us also sometimes, giving us an outlet for our imagination, and saving us from boredom and loneliness. We cannot enumerate all the good things that you do for the society. My friends of the media, we do not expect you to always provide us with only happy and good news. We can understand when you bring us bad news. Bad news hurt. In the Bible, we hear about a lady who died when she heard her husband has been killed. We cannot avoid sad news if they are true and accurate. But please do not rush into judgments and misinterpretation. For example, recently we were shocked and saddened to hear the sad news about the schoolyard wanton killing of old and young people and religious leaders in the hands of criminals in the Gulliso Walaga. But it is not fair to rush into judgments. We are saddened that the murders took place in Oromo land. But the Oromo are a people known for their hospitality, kindness, and tolerance. The Oromo are a people noted for their tradition of Guddifaccia, whereby strangers and newcomers from distant regions are formally adopted into community and integrated with love and respect. And I can say that even 99% of the people of Ethiopia indeed seek nothing but shelter, food, education. However, worse still, it's not only our rush into hasty judgments about certain events. We often these days bombard us with false and inaccurate information, knowingly sometimes, or maybe unknowingly. Indeed, bad news hurt, but false, fake, hateful, unsubstantiated news cause us even more harm. You often these days use technology to bombard us with such hateful, unverified, misleading information. Hate is worse than poison. Brothers and sisters of the media, with my great respect, our beloved land of Ethiopia has been known since ancient times as a land of peace and tolerance. The Greeks, the Hebrews, and all the others have hailed Ethiopia as a home of tolerant and peaceful people. So what happened to us today? Why do we merchandise and propagate hate instead of preaching peace? 5 years ago, as a member of a doctoral dissertation committee for a Sri Lankan university student of psychology, an estimated 100,000 people, not counting military death, perished during that conflict of 1987-9. I learned from reading the thesis the root of the conflict was bad propaganda, bitter ethnic hate among Tamils, Sinhalese, and Moors. What was originally meant to promote ethnic pride was turned into philosophy of ethnic hate. The discrimination that was propagated in a state sector, employment, practice, and demand for separate state over time turned into bitter hatred that generated and escalated into inter-ethnic hate, death, and destruction. So today, when I hear abusive or strong words of hate from some of my compatriots in the media, maligning one another, of our beautiful people, instead of preaching peace, it pains me and frightens me very much. If I were a person capable of anger, I would say I'm madly angry. When we hate our fellow Ethiopians, instead of preaching peace, we empower external forces that wish to do us harm. My brothers and sisters of the media, why do you sometimes contribute to such hate? You yourselves know that Hitler's Mein Kampf with false information about Jews led to the Holocaust. Fake and hateful information led to the Rwandan genocide. Unproven communications using advanced internet loaded with false information is spread to our young people. It results only into hurting groups. In our Ethiopia, these days, we see many in the media propagating instant communication of hate and destruction. 2 years ago, thanks to my friend Dr. Jonas Gada, I was a guest speaker at the Mayo Clinic on cultural diversity in the health services. Many of the doctors I met agreed with me that hate is a psychological disease. It's as bad as cancer. It is a serious illness of the mind that needs to be treated. It will destroy the person who harbors it. It affects the brain and it affects the brain and the heart of those who propagate it. It can actually shorten the life. On the contrary, peace, love, and respect of others calm the brain and the nervous system. Some psychologists say that positive reinforcement of others rather than their punishment gives people more positive life options. To work for the good of others and for peace, and to reach across the lines and look to the future rather than attack people, indeed bring joy, happiness, and rich personal fulfillment. All of the religions of our country teach love and peace. The philosophers of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam taught love and compassion. They even taught, hey, love even your enemy as yourself. Hating people and considering them as enemy should be abhorrent to any decent Ethiopian, particularly to our media people.
I think.
Hello? Nobody denies that there are political differences among us. We have serious problems that we have to deal with. Those of us who are now ardently working for peace plan to work with the government and political parties to find solution of all the problems. We should focus on dangerous problems that I call hate, to wash it away from our minds so that we can sit down together calmly as brothers and sisters, solve our problems, and promote peace. My dear friends of the media, you can help. Nobody denies that we need in our country strong, genuine democracy. Please continue to promote that. But the road to genuine democracy and political agreement is not paved by hate and anger and bad propaganda, false news, but through calm dialogue and respectful discourse. Then we can form a covenant of timeless coexistence. No one but you in the media can help. Brothers and sisters, as I come closer to the end of my talk, please forgive me if I sound too accusatory. I love you, even if you send hateful messages over the airwaves. I pray for you so that God can open your heart and mind so that you can repent and turn your energy from the waves of anger and propagating hate to the highway of love and kindness. We must free ourselves from the fault line of linguistic group antagonism and form instead active coalition of women, men of different communities in order to bring genuine democracy and peace in our land. We can build together our beloved homeland, fight against our true enemies, poverty, disease, and illiteracy. Dear brothers and sisters of the media, we do have real enemies that we need to fight against: poverty, disease, and illiteracy. The poor people of our country are loving, humble, and truthful. I've traveled all over the country many times. I don't need to recite, but in every place, I have only been asked, Would you like to come and have coffee? I was not asked, are you Amhara, Oromo, Tigray, or so on. Instead, they sometimes get off their bed and give us their bed to stay on. They wash our feet. So why are we educated media people who control the media and the news not learn from them instead of propagating news that germinates hate and lead to death and destruction? Please forgive me if I have been harsh in this message, but I beg you to open your hearts and minds and save our people from the present fighting. I beg you, do not make this an ethnic war. I beg you to play an informative role for peace, to propagate peace, to teach peace. I beg you, do not be manipulated by those intent on instigating hate, violence, and conflicts. Our people are humble and vulnerable. Please monitor and correct yourselves and use your services for constructive use, not destructive, self-destruction and hate. Please be based on facts. Please guard yourselves and be accountable and serve the truth. Preach peace. Please cooperate with us who are trying to humbly make peace. I beg you, my dear brothers and sisters of the media, in this respectful letter to you, cooperate with us for the sake of the poor people. May God help us. Now, before I conclude, I would very much like to introduce members, very speedily, members of our peace committee who had done marvelous job and brought us here together to this meeting. In particular, let me thank Atokasi Kabede, who really helped sponsor this particular event, and also with the Dr. Sanait of the Buffer Foundation, and Dr. Eleni Gabramedin, the founder of the Ethiopian commodity, and others. But let me very speedily read the names of all of them. If you forgive me, on their behalf, I send you my greetings. Dr. Ahmed Moen, Professor Howard, Professor Ambassador Bakale Galata, first African president of the Red Cross and Red Crescent, Ambassador Daniel Yohannes, distinguished businessman, former ambassador of the United States to the OECD under President Barack Obama, Dr. Tawud Siraj, professor of medicine and internal travel clinic at University of Wisconsin, Dr. Eleni Gabramedhin, whom I already mentioned, the founder of the Ethiopian commodity market, Memhir Gabramariam Ratta, an artist, founder of Lunch for School Children, a war casualty, Ato Gabriel Nigatu, senior fellow of the Atlantic Council of Africa, Director General, African Development Bank, Dr. Alselase Balai, former governor of the Tigray province, Vice Minister of Agriculture in Ethiopia in the Emperor's time, Atokasa Kabede, whom I already mentioned, distinguished businessman, investor, and philanthropist, who has Dr. Kabede Benya, medical doctor at Mayo Clinic, Widero Mimi Alamayo, former executive vice president under President Obama, and now a leader in the MasterCard business. Widero Sabat Asfaye, senior banker in Philadelphia. Professor Dr. Sanait Fisaha, director of global programs of the Susan Buffett Foundation, and professor of obstetrics and gynecology at University of Michigan, and chief advisor to the World Health Organization. Dr. Tadesse Wuhib, who also I should thank especially for much hard work he has done to make this event possible. And he's really invested a lot of time, although he is a very active member of the United States Center for Disease Control and Prevention, especially in these days of the coronavirus. He is very, very busy, but he's put in a tremendous amount of time to help us promote this. Dr. Tilahun Bayyana, distinguished professor and dean at University of Maryland. among the first founders of our peace organization with Dr. Ali Selassie and Dr. Ahmed. Ato Yom Fisaha, distinguished businessman. Wazaro Amrote Abdallah, regional director for Africa and Microsoft. And Wazaro Hanna Sadiq, who now represents the another organization in Nairobi. And I thank all of them with my deep heart. And then let me conclude just by reading just a couple passages from the Bible. The Bible, okay, sorry, forgive me. It is the last words I will be saying. It says, first of all, I quote Reverend Martin Luther King, who said, "We must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or perish together as fools." So let us all become an exemplary people. In the Bible, it says, evil tidings melt the heart. On the other hand, how good upon the mountains the feet of him who brings good news. So let us become exemplary people to Africa as people who love peace, love, and respect each other. May God shine upon us and give us and guide us in the way of peace. Amen.
Amen. Amen to that, Professor. Thank you very much for your message and for your stressing on peace, particularly for media people and nowadays social media people as well, because the effect of hate speech and disinformation, we've seen how devastating it is. And thank you very much for your elderly advice, because we really needed to come together so that we can win our true enemy, which is poverty, not fighting each other. Thank you very much. And
by the way, if you give me a minute, I forgot Miss Kulani Jalata, who is also a member of the United States Congress, works for the United, and if I forgot anybody else, my friends will. I'm sorry. I thank you also. And
okay, thank you so much, Professor, and thank you for taking your time to bring all these people together and to put the symposium into to make it a reality, because it's indeed timely and crucial that we talk about peace, we talk about the effects of hate speech and disinformation at this particular time. So let's go to our next speaker, and the next speaker is none other than Ato Amara Aragawi. Most of us know Ato Amara Aragawi from the Reporter newspaper, first in Amharic, then in English, and after that, especially in the recent years, Ato Amara has been engaged in forming the Ethiopian Media Council. And he has been a journalist, the founder of Media and Communications Center, which publishes the Reporter newspaper, as I said. And now he is the chairperson of the newly established Ethiopian Media Council. And today he will be talking about the role of the Media Council. One thing, just to remind you, please go on your social media and keep discussing hashtag Media for Peace across your social media. Just use hashtag Media for Peace so we can get your information or your tweets, your posts, and also make sure that you ask the questions on the platform if you are on social, and continue the discussion, export it to your social media. Now, without further ado, help me in warmly welcoming Ato Amara Aragawi. He will be talking about the Ethiopian Media Council and the role of the council and media in for peace. Okay? All right, let's have Ato Amara. Yes.
Thank you very much, PDCI, for organizing with the MCs this meeting. And I would like to thank also the organizers, Meti, Idona, and all that. And I would really appreciate that with us to discuss about the role of peace in peace. with a well-experienced professional Mark Thomas. It's really an honor to have you together. And I would like also to appreciate all media people and all other guests who are attending this meeting. Today's topic is the role of the media.
Atamara, could you be a little bit louder? Tinish dims, we can't hear you. A little bit louder.
In fighting hate speech and misinformation. This is the reason why the Ethiopian Media Council was created. To fight misconduct in the media like hate speech and misinformation. 15 years ago, the government came up with a draft law that says the government will control the code of conduct of the media. And it will establish an institution to control it. It was 15 years ago at the Gion Hotel meeting, and we, some of the media people at that time, we opposed it. Now, the code of conduct of the media is going to be controlled by the media itself, not by the government. So we fought for 1 year on this issue. Finally, the government agreed, okay, I will delete it from the law, let the media itself establish it. Then we had been working on it to create the Media Council by inviting an international Media Council professional, David Ward, from the UK. And we worked on that, and we were created in 2008, sponsored by the United Nations. But we had a problem of registering it, and we were registered in 2011. When we were created, we were 19 members of media houses, not individuals, media houses and media associations. But now the members of the Ethiopian Media Council are about 50 media houses, radio, television, newspaper, magazine, and associations from Addis Ababa and from other regions. And we'll expect the number is increasing because requests are coming to us. And the whole point is to fight the misconduct of the media in reporting, like hate speech and fake news and misinformation, Because the media needs freedom of expression, no compromise with that. But freedom of expression should be combined with ethical journalism. That was our idea. And that's what we are fighting now. At present, the need of fighting misconduct of the media like hate speech and misinformation, fake news, and all this is very important more than any other time. Because even though there are good medias that are doing their job, but there is also a big worry by the wrong medias who are misinforming the public with lack of ethics. To give you some facts, as Professor Ephraim was saying, we had a great value to the world show. We have Muslims, we have Christians, we have Jews, but they don't shoot at each other, they were not. In fact, they were getting married with each other. When churches were built, the Muslim community were helping. When mosques were built, the Christian community was helping and getting to each other. In fact, in some places in Wallo, if you go and see, the head of the church is Reverend Haile Mariam Muhammad, and the head of the mosque is Sheikh Ali Gabra Christos. We didn't have any problem. But nowadays, we are seeing churches being burnt and mosques being burnt and killing each other and insulting each other and hate speech a lot. And with ethnicity, the same thing. We have been fighting foreign enemies and so many things together. When we were fighting during the Battle of Adwa, every Ethiopian was there. no ethnicity difference. There were Muslims, there were Christians, there was Oromos, Amharas, Tigrayans, Gurages, Hararis, and everything from everywhere they were there. But now we are even having a problem of living together, studying together in a university, and it has become even a difficult time for students from different nationalities to sleep in one dormitory and in one class. In such things, the media is playing also a wrong part, a wrong role by spreading hate speech and fake news, fake information, fake photographs. Sometimes we see some photographs of hate. This was the nationality was killed by that one, and the photographs come from years back in Rwanda or in India or in Pakistan or somewhere else. So I'm not blaming every media, but there are medias and social media, especially nowadays. The other problem is there is no difference between journalism and activism. It's mixed up. There are some activists who play their role, like Martin Luther King and Jesse Jackson, all those activists. I'm not against activists, but we have a lot of activists who are not playing their role here. It is in such a situation that the media has to help and work hard. To be a member of the Media Council, the requirement is two things. One, to have to be a legally registered media. Second, you have to agree to a code of conduct. With a code of conduct, and sides are accepted. When I say there are 50 organizations who are members, those organizations are legal and they have signed that the code of conduct is be respected. While we were working on this one, there was one thing that was remaining. When the media makes a mistake and when people complain, it's not the media man or the media institution itself that should be judging whether it is a code of conduct missing or was it non-illegal. The body that sees all those complaints is an independent body. An independent body that has two bodies inside it. One is the ombudsman body that hears all the complaints, like a registrar and the first grade judge in court. And then it has got also the panelists. This one is not only the media, but we have selected from 18 organizations, like from universities, from civil society, from association of judges, retired judges, famous judges, and from parliament, from peace ministry, we have all this. And we have got also civil societies and all this. So when a complaint comes, it is going to be seen by the body which is represented by the civil society, not by the media itself. The media people are there, 2 or 3, but the total number is 18. We have been working hard to create this one. Now it's created, it's finalized. Now, I hope by next week we'll go for action. And for those things to work, we are going to have so many programs of training the media how to behave, how to control their code of conduct, what code of conduct means, and show them the damage, misconduct, and hate speech and fake news and all this are going to cause on our country. If we remember the situation in Rwanda, the media played a wrong part, a dirty part, by inciting fake news, hate news, and all this. We shouldn't leave it to the government only. We shouldn't leave it to others. The media has to play its own part. All those rules and regulations, code of conduct is already drafted, it's already approved, it's already legalized and accepted, licensed, and we have created the body that accepts complaints from the society and gives a judgment. And this is the participation of the public is approved there. So what we have to do, what the next step is, to put in practice the media itself, controlling the media. When we talk about freedom of the press has got values, First, it has to respect humanity, not creating conflict among humanity. Humanity, value, correctness, without being a supporter of that one or that one, but being a server of the public, serving the public, because an informed public cannot participate in developing the country, in creating peace and everything. So the media has got a responsibility to inform the public the correct things and not incite for hate, for war, for fighting, for bloodshed and all things. This we are seeing it. We have got already the red card. So hereafter, we have to take action. As a media people, we have to work together day and night so that our beloved country will be a united country, a peaceful country, so many ethnicity groups living and laughing together, working together, and again bring back the fame of the country. It was the oldest country who has got civilization, mathematics, architecture, philosophy, and everything. And it was the head of EU Center of Africa, the AU, the United Nations, and all this. But everybody is worrying, and the Africans who were proud of Ethiopia are now shocking about the situation in Ethiopia. So what I would like to say is, talking is not enough. Let's walk our talk and create peace in Ethiopia together with everybody that works for peace, like PDCI, and with the Ethiopian people, and with anybody, any politician who is ready to work for peace. Hand in hand, let's serve the country. Let's stop bloodshed. Let's think about development, progress, democracy, and all those positive things. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ato Amara. We really appreciate it. And yes, the role of media is very crucial, particularly in times like this. And in our country, especially, people tend to believe what media houses say. And I'm glad that the media houses are in charge and they take over the power. Yes?
Sound problem, I can't hear you, Hannah.
Oh, okay. I think it's, maybe it could be the speaker. Okay. All right. So thank you very much. Once again, to remind you, our viewers, and I see that you're joining us from all over the world. We get texts and, we see you discussing, engaging in the discussion on this platform on social. So thank you very much. Once again, this event is brought to you by PDCI, Peace and Development Center International, and the Ethiopian Media Council. And the online platform on the online event is organized by Flawless. So thank you very much for joining us. We're getting all your questions. We're collecting your questions and we're sorting them out. And towards the end, we'll have a session for Q&A and we'll address it to the right people to answer your questions. But keep engaged. Keep engaging on the platform. On the social platform, you can put your questions. You can also put discussions. You can export them to your social media. And when you tweet or post on different social media, make sure that you use the hashtag media for peace so that everyone can engage in this discussion. So once again, I really appreciate it. And now let's move on to our next speaker. So on the poster, you've seen Her Excellency Wezaro Muferiat Kamil, Minister of the Ministry of Peace, was going to join us, but due to the current situation and her extremely tight schedule, she couldn't join us. It's understandable because our country is in a very delicate state right now. So, but she sends her message through her representative. And today we have a senior advisor of the Ministry of Peace, Dr. Abdi Zannaba. He is going to pass on the message from Her Excellency. By the way, Her Excellency Wezaro Muferiat is the chairwoman of the board of the Ethiopian Media Council. So he will give us, Dr. Abdi will give us her message, and also he will share with us the role of the Ministry of Peace in all this. So I would like to invite Dr. Abdi Zannaba, and also make sure that you engage with us not only today but in the coming 4 weeks, because every Saturday for 4 Saturdays we'll continue this symposium on the Ethiopian media for peace. We'll have different topics. Today is effects of hate speech and disinformation on intergroup conflict. Next week we'll be having another topic. On the 3rd week as well we'll have another subtopic, and towards the end, on the 4th week, we will have we believe we'll get to a consensus, and we'll pledge on how to deal with as media and as social media influencers on peace in Ethiopia. Okay, go to the platform and you'll also find the objective of this symposium. All right, so let's hear the message, and then I will come back and we'll continue the session.
Salam everyone, I'm Abdi Zannaba, advisor to the Minister of Peace, the Ministry of Peace, Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and I'm very happy to be here with you all, and I'm here to relate to you the message of Her Excellency Muferiat Kamil, the Minister of Peace, and this is a very important topic to Her Excellency, and I'm going to read to you in a while. About this issue, she also asked me to communicate to you that this is a very critical and important issue to the world across Ethiopia, no different, no exception. So in a time where we are all producers and receivers of information, we have to be very much careful about how we are going to manage and ensure democracy, as media is the most important component and pillar of democracy it is. So, utmost apologies for Her Excellencies not to be with us here today because of multiple activities she's engaged in. Now I would like to relate to you Her Excellency's message to this symposium. On behalf of the Ministry of Peace, I am pleased to welcome you to the Media for Peace symposium jointly organized with the Ethiopian Media Council and the NGO Peace and Development Center International. As you all know, media history is directly linked to the way in which we communicate horizontally, vertically, and collectively in the public domain. Media technology facilitates this communication by combining audio and visual technologies. It creatively assembles and disseminates information, message, knowledge, business, and culture to between and among diverse populations. The anatomy of media today includes technologies that have shifted the one-to-many model of the 20th century to a one-to-one model in the 21st century landscape that is internationally dominated by social media. This creates new challenges for media managers and editors nationally and internationally, as their influence over content and their authority over editorial control is challenged beyond the geographical boundaries they are used to. The complexities and impact of social media tends to undermine the role of mainstream media and has demonstrated its capacity to influence, social and political upheavals across different parts of the world. Whereas in other parts of the world, it has also positively contributed to businesses and marketing development. The fate of social media in Ethiopia will be determined by various factors, including comparative reach to the public at large. On the global front, only half of the world population uses social media. In Ethiopia, 7 million people use social media platforms, according to the latest information we have. This demonstrates that the reach of Ethiopian mainstream and social media content is not only important to its immediate public, but also an important international audience that was previously not accounted for. Balancing the use of mainstream and social media may depend on how media and society continue to relate to one another. The interpersonal, top-down or bottom-up communication that occurs in daily life is reflected in our overall behavior and culture, and eventually go through many circles where it is mirrored through mainstream and social media critically recycled online and offline outside the public domain. This is where influence and authority are mostly structured before they evolve and become visible in the public domain. Ethiopia's media landscape today enjoys diverse both in political and cultural form. It enjoys diversity both in political and cultural form. Under the current circumstances, and giving due consideration to the multiple vulnerabilities of our media and social landscape, an ideal ethical approach for all media practitioners is to focus on the immediacy of public safety. I wish to emphasize that peace is a process that media can help to achieve. There cannot be any quick fixes, for peace becomes achievable when it is supported by a social and political culture that supports listening, enjoys visualizing, and is open to public scrutiny and dialogue. The last of these three elements, public scrutiny and dialogue, is an ingredient that demands civic participation. It is essential for any democratic process, places particular demands both on the media industry and the public at large. On the one hand, it adds pressure on media professionals, demanding more creativity and ethical practice. And on the other, it increases demands for effective social communication, even when friction is present within the body of society. Allow me to rephrase using the analogy of human anatomy. Media professionals are the heartbeat of the industry. You are responsible for the maintenance of pump and the muscle that allows information, knowledge, and entertainment to flow the same way the human heart ensures that oxygen flows without interruption in the bloodstream. Using the same analogy, take society as the entire human body, which is full of important organs, such as the kidneys, the liver, the intestine, and etc. They facilitate the flow of oxygen to the rest of the body. The same way public, political, business, and educational organizations have a role in maintaining the health of information flowing in and out of Ethiopia's media system. As with human body, the nervous system of our media is most complex. It is composed of millions of individuals, recipients that are networked within their own individual communication network and systems, collectively building communities at the foundation of our society at large. I didn't need to tell you how important it is to understand that such communities choose to respond and react to the media, for they are the receptors in our media anatomical nervous system. There is no single approach that can be prescribed to guarantee cooperation between all of the anatomical organs. However, collaboration between them is essential for the oxygen to keep flowing and for peace and harmony to prevail. This symposium offers you the opportunity to reflect on both the anatomy and the landscape of our beloved country's media. Unlike countries that enjoy media on the foundations of strong economic foundations, Ethiopia leans onto onto a foundation of social capital as well as cultural and linguistic diversity. The way our media system evolves and grows is therefore likely to be of an original kind and rather different to what is experienced in other models found around the world. Everywhere, COVID-19 is a challenge. For us, it is one of many traits that adds to the discomfort and disease of our beautifully diverse people. I encourage you to keep the topic of health connected to the topic of our media system. Try to imagine where exactly our media is found in the stage of its development and in its relationship with society. It is crawling like a baby or puffing its chest out like a hot-headed adolescent. Does it hold public attention or public dissatisfaction? Where lies the competition and the force of influence or resistance? What lies ahead? What has changed and what is in the process of changing? I invite you to keep on an open mind while you participate in the sessions that unfold and engage with passion and professional determination. Prepare to utilize your creative talent to gauge where exactly we are in the health of both our media practice and in the health of our society through social, economic, and political processes. Ask important questions, and when you imagine solutions, inquire whether you have the capacity to see through what you preach. Media is part of human development. We shall embrace it and invest ourselves with everlasting peace in mind. Thank you and enjoy the symposium. Her Excellency Muferihat Kamil's message from the Ministry of Peace, Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. I thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Abdi. We really appreciate your time, particularly in this, in the time of turmoil. You took your time to share with us about the Ministry of Peace, its roles, and the current work that you are doing. We really appreciate it. And once again, Her Excellency Wezero Muferiat is the chairwoman of the the board of the Ethiopian Media Council. All right, so we come to halfway. We come halfway in the symposium for today. This is the first session, and how about taking a little break? As we know, when we talk about peace and when we try to build peace and when we try to bring people together, art plays a crucial role. We always emphasize on that. Art and artists have a huge role in bringing us together, in helping us in the peace building process. So today we are here with our own special guest and artist. She is a peace advocate, a singer, songwriter, educator, a mother of three, and she uses her social media platform, particularly Facebook, to talk about peace, unity, and love. And today we're bringing you none other than Munit Mesfin. She's going to sing a poem. Yes, she's going to sing a poem. And let's hear from Munit. She's joining us today from the US, and she is very much concerned, as we all are, about the current situation of Ethiopia. And she actually said she wants to have home to go back to with her children without any fear. And now help me in welcoming Munit Mesfin to sing about love and peace, as she always does. You can follow her on Facebook, particularly because she's very active on Facebook, and Munit Mesfin. You can find it on Facebook as a page and as her personal. I don't know if she has space for new friends because she has 5,000 friends, but she has a personal page, so follow her. All right, so Munit, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mati, for that wonderful introduction. It's good to be here with all of you here on this very important dialogue on media and its role for peace. The power of media is undeniable. This is the earpiece and the That's what everybody goes to for information. Particularly now, as Mati mentioned, I am in the US, so I'm always looking for as many reliable sources of information about what's going on in Ethiopia. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish what is true and what is untrue. So the more that we can do to get media to be the absolutely trustworthy source of information, the calmer the whole situation will be. So in terms of the role of media, we're glad to have this conversation with you. In terms of the role of arts, definitely I believe in the power of arts for positive social change. I try to use my art always for positive social change. The next song that I'm going to be performing, it is in Amharic. It is a poem by Gash Tsaggai ገብረመድህን, poet laureate Tsaggai ገብረመድህን. I will just translate it for the purpose of those that do not speak Amharic. It says, Ferran, we are afraid of love, and love that we have been given as children, love that we have been given by the Creator who loves us. And because we are afraid of love, love is denied us. So I've added a little bit more at the end to give us a little bit of hope, because we don't want to just walk away feeling afraid of love and feeling like we are afraid. So this is Ferran. I hope that you enjoy it. I'll be accompanying myself with a small ukulele. Definitely follow me on all social media. I am slow on Twitter and Instagram, but very much active on Facebook. So see you there. Ferran fikren ferran, ferran hibret ferran, ferran fikren ferran, ferran hibret ferran, በልጅነት የተሰጠን ፍቅርን ferran, ferran fikren ferran, ferran hibret ferran, ferran fikren ferran, ferran hibret ferran, የነፍስን አንደበት ዘጋን ፍቅርን ferran, የፍቅር አምላክ በጥበቡ በረቂቅ ያለበሰን፣ የፍቅር አምላክ በጥበቡ በመለኮት የቀባን ፍቅርን ferran፣ ህብረት ferran፣ የፍቅር አምላክ በጥበቡ በረቂቅ ያለበሰን፣ የፍቅር አምላክ በጥበቡ በመለኮት የቀባን ፍቅርን ferran፣ ምኑን ferran፣ እንዴት ferran፣ ለምን ferran፣ ፍቅርን ነሳን፣ ferran ፍቅርን ferran፣ ferran ህብረት ferran፣ ferran ፍቅርን ferran፣ ferran ህብረት ferran፣ በልጅነት የተሰጠን ፍቅርን ferran፣ ferran ፍቅርን ferran፣ ferran ህብረት ferran፣ ferran ፍቅርን ferran፣ ferran ህብረት ferran፣ የነፍስን አንደበት ዘጋን ፍቅርን ferran፣ የፍቅር አምላክ በጥበቡ በረቂቅ ያለበሰን፣ የፍቅር አምላክ በጥበቡ በመለኮት የቀባን ፍቅርን ferran፣ ህብረት ferran፣ የፍቅር አምላክ በጥበቡ በረቂቅ ያለበሰን፣ የፍቅር አምላክ በጥበቡ በመለኮት የቀባንን ፍቅርን ferran፣ እንዴት ferran፣ ምኑን ferran፣ ለምን ferran፣ እንዴት ferran፣ ferran ፍቅርን ነሳን፣ ነሳን። ግን እኛ እኮ የሰላም ጀግኖች መሆን እንችላለን፣ ግን እኛ እኮ የሰላም ጀግኖች መሆን እንችላለን፣ ግን እኛ እኮ የፍትህ ጀግኖች መሆን እንችላለን፣ ግን እኛ እኮ የእውነት ጀግኖች መሆን እንችላለን ግን እኛ እኮ የፍቅር ጀግኖች መሆን እንችላለን ግን እኛ እኮ የፍትህ ጀግኖች መሆን እንችላለን ግን እኛ እኮ የሰላም ጀግኖች መሆን እንችላለን ግን እኛ እኮ የእውነት ጀግኖች መሆን እንችላለን የእውነት ጀግኖች መሆን እንችላለን የእውነት ጀግኖች መሆን እንችላለን በሰላም ፍቅር በሰላም በፍቅር በሰላም በፍቅር በሰላም በፍቅር በሰላም በፍቅር በሰላም በፍቅር መኖርም እንችላለን አመሰግናለሁ Thank you. This was a poem from Isat Wayababa by Gash Tsaggaye Gabramedin that I put some music to. I hope you enjoyed it. እንደወደዳችሁ ተስፋ አደርጋለሁ። ያው ግጥሙንም እንደሰማችሁት ከልቤ እመኛለሁ። አመሰግናለሁ።
Thank you, Munite. በጣም እናመሰግናለን. Thank you so much. This has been, well, as I said, you know, through art we can preach peace, we can advocate for peace, and yeah, this is great because also Farran Fikran Farran by Tsaggaye Gabramedhin, you know, from his legendary book Isat Wayababa, yeah, very prominent. So thank you very much. We need art to bring us together, and we need art for the peace building process. All right, so are you ready? Because we are going to have another poll now, and we're going to run this poll. Go to your platform, the social platform, and go to the live stream, and you will find the polling on the right side, and we will bring the next question. Yes, so let's see. Do you believe that your platform/voice on social media or other vehicles you use have influence on the public? Yes, very much so. Yes, somewhat. No, not at all. I have no idea. So let's see. Now start clicking on your answer. The question for the polling. By the way, only those who are on social platform, on the web or on the app can answer to the polling. The others who are watching from YouTube, unfortunately you can't, but you can keep commenting. And those of you who are already on social media, please use #MediaForPeace and you can share your answers. So this poll is, do you believe that your platform/voice on social media or other vehicles you use have influence on the public? First answer, yes, very much so. Second answer, yes, somewhat. Third answer, no, not at all. And fourth answer, I have no idea. So answer on the polling and let's see. Okay, so far we have yes, somewhat, 42.9%. Yes, very much so. And I have no idea, 20%, not at all. Nobody thinks their voice has no power. Nobody thinks, and I am glad to hear that, because at least we know that we have a voice, very much or somewhat, but there are people who say they have no idea. Okay, go on, because we're going to share the answer very soon. 50% yes, somewhat. 33% yes, very much so. 16.7% I have no idea. Okay, so great. So 50%, yeah, so 50% so far, but keep on clicking and we will launch this question again, this polling, after the keynote. All right, so now, great, all of you, I believe most people have voted, but others can also share your ideas and you can continue thinking about it while we are coming back for this particular poll after the keynotes. All right, so Now we are going to have Mr. Mark Thompson with us. Mr. Mark Thompson is former Director General of the BBC and CEO of the New York Times until September 2020. Now, in 2016, Mr. Mark Thompson wrote a book entitled Enough Said, What's Gone Wrong with the Language of Politics. And today he is going to be telling us about, of course, the main topic today is hate speech and disinformation. He's going to share his expertise, and he's going to share from real examples that have happened around the world, particularly focusing on lack of respect on the truths. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Mr. Mark Thompson to share with us his experience. He will give us his keynote remark. Mr. Mark Thompson, welcome.
Thank you, Meti. Thank you. And hello to everyone who's come to this symposium. I feel very privileged to be asked to talk to the symposium. I also want to say that I feel very, I feel real humility about talking to you, partly because of my lack of knowledge. I don't suppose there's a more ignorant person in this symposium about the detail of what's happening both in Ethiopian media and more broadly in Ethiopia right now. And secondly, because of the awful events and this very troubling situation, which I was listening to the BBC a few minutes ago, that's unfolding in Ethiopia at the moment. I came to Ethiopia in 1989 to report on the civil war then, and so I've seen with my own eyes the human consequences of communal strife, terrible dislocation, death, injury, and also secondary effects. In 1989, I was in Tigray, where there was a terrible famine as a result of the conflict. And so, although I'm going to be, in a sense, theorizing about hate speech and theorizing about what happens when political language goes wrong, I want to say very clearly that I don't forget, and none of us should forget, that this is not just political theory or media theory. It affects real lives and real human beings. So, as you said, I mean, I think the reason that Professor Ephraim suggested I might talk to you is twofold, really. I've been a working journalist and editor and then media executive for my whole career. I was appointed a graduate trainee at the BBC at the age of 22, I think, just as Margaret Thatcher was coming to power in 1979, and I stepped down as chief executive of the New York Times a few weeks ago, towards the end of the 2016 presidential election in the US. So in a sense, my era has seen immense political changes and changes in media in both the UK and America. And for much of that time, I myself was reporting from around the world and covering elections and other political events in many, many countries, also covering, unfortunately, conflicts in many countries. And that's, I guess, one of the reasons I'm there. And the second thing is this book that I wrote in 2016, which really looks at what I think I'd seen as a working journalist and editor-in-chief, in the way in which the whole way in which politicians and the media and the public communicated with each other seemed to me to be deteriorating. I mean, in some ways, people always say this, but actually, I think there were very specific reasons why in our era we've seen that deterioration. And I focused in particular, the role of digital media and social media as a kind of accelerant of some adverse trends and effects in media. So what I'm going to do over the next 25 minutes is look at some of the themes of my book, some of, if you like, parts of my thoughts about what's happening globally to media, and in particular honing in on hate speech. I'm going to give you, I'm going to talk through two examples of what I'm talking about, one of which is from some hundreds of years ago, in a situation which I think is not entirely dissimilar from today. And the second example is current. It's the literally what's happening now in the election and post-election in the United States. And then I'm going to turn to remedies and to discuss some of the different ways in which we could, both as media people, as journalists and publishers, we can react to this, and also what governments can potentially do, and just really doing that hopefully to provoke a broader discussion. So let me begin with my book, and as I've said, my book is looking at a broad set of relationships and tensions between politicians and their desire to get their messages across to the public, the media intending to put those messages in context, to critique them, to hold politicians to account, and the listening public trying to make sense of it all. And that's the broad context. But one of the big themes of the book is around a cluster of issues, and I want to characterize it like this: themes which are two Ds followed by a V followed by a D, and the first D is disinformation. This is fake news. It's the promulgation of non-factual or counterfactual claims and allegations. That's the first D. The second D is division. The disinformation is sometimes just put out there for mischief, but often it's put out there very deliberately and with a political intention to divide different groups of people. My V is for victimization. Often the purpose of disinformation is to divide people and persuade a community that they are victims of another community or of a set of institutions or a different class in society. And victimization, bound up with the notion of trying to convince a given group of people with false information that they're victims, is to find another group to blame. And my last D is demonization. And victimization and demonization go together, that you are victims of this group. They are trying to persecute you. They're trying to steal what rightfully belongs to you. They're trying to oppress you. And this is an ancient, in ancient times, in classical literature, all of these things are well known. The role of rumor in ancient times, many-tongued rumor was widely discussed, and rumor has almost always got some kind of political agenda in the literature. It's spread to undermine a politician or a ruling class or some other sector of society. Those of you who know Shakespeare will know that Henry IV Part 2 begins with rumor spreading completely false news, fake news about a major battle in one of the UK's or England's early civil wars, the Wars of the Roses. So this has always been around, but to state the obvious, the arrival of digital media, and in particular social media, has meant that rumors and other forms of disinformation can be spread astonishingly quickly, and moreover that people are not really used to. We haven't yet habituated ourselves as societies to the way in which digital media and social media works, and so there's always a risk that greater credence will be given to fake news than if we were, as it were, used to the noise, if you like, of digital media. Another thing I talk about in my book is what I call authenticism. And obviously authenticity as a word means something which is true to itself, which is real, which is not fake. Authenticism, I mean something slightly different. I mean a politics and a political language which makes an enormous deal about how true it is, how it provides the real truth, it's truth-telling. And authenticism sets itself against a more rational, more moderate kind of language, and very loudly tells its audience that it's revealing real truths about what's going on. And one of the paradoxes is often disinformation is provided with a kind of authenticist gloss. So although it's not true, it's actually claiming to be revealing very deep truths and, as it were, to be the real source of truth. And I think this is one of the biggest puzzles and biggest problems that legitimate media and legitimate politicians have, is they're facing people who are not only lying, but actually claiming to be almost like investigative journalists, that they're claiming to be revealing what's really going on. They're going deep and explaining to their audience the truth about what's really happening. And so this is the false clothes of truth. It's lies who are dressing themselves up as if they're the real truth. And to state the obvious, it's obvious in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in many other countries, both in the developed world, in the West, and also in the rest of the world, the developing world, that this kind of disinformation aimed at division and demonization and in celebrating supposed victimhood and dressing itself in the clothes of authenticity is gaining real traction and having real world political consequences. Why? Why are people so prone to be taken in by it? I've talked about one thing, which is the lack of familiarity and lack of habituation to digital media. I think something else is storytelling. The authenticist wants to reinforce very comforting stories about a community and about the past and the present and the future, about values, and so stories of victimhood. You've always been oppressed by this group, or you've always been downtrodden, you've always been unfairly treated. These are very comforting stories to people, and I want to call on the concept of cognitive dissonance. The idea that once people have got a very fixed idea, they're much more likely to give credence to messages which reinforce that idea. In another context, this is sometimes called confirmation bias. So when somebody says something to you which reinforces your own self-image, reinforces the kind of prejudices and assumptions and comfortable narratives you, maybe your family, your community have always had, they're very likely to be believed. And facts and messages which contradict or cast doubt on those narratives, those stories, those comforting stories, you tend to dismiss. And it seems to me one of the striking things about modern politics in many countries is just how far many people will go in dismissing obvious facts, because those obvious facts conflict with a narrative. I'll come on to the US election in a few minutes, but we know from polling that a majority of Republicans in the US believe currently, we're right in the middle of this debate, but believe currently that the election which took place a few days ago was rigged, that Donald Trump actually won it, and that insofar as the numbers suggest that, on the contrary, Joe Biden won it and won it very clearly with a very big margin, that these facts are not facts. They are a part of they're proof of a conspiracy by the Democrats to, in quotes, steal the election. And that's believed right now by many people in America without any, or with, I would say, next to no real world evidence to back it up. We're going to see whether that's going to develop, but that's where we are right now. So I thought I'd give you a couple of examples. The first example I want to draw from my book, to set the example in context, we're going to go to England in the 1640s, the early 1640s, in fact, 1642 to be exact. And this is a moment in English history, British history, I should say, of great division. The King Charles, is a king of three kingdoms. England and Wales is one, Scotland and Ireland are the other two. And there's immense division in these kingdoms. Much of it based on religion. There's a battle between Protestants and Catholics, and also a battle of ideas and a passion between different flavors of Protestantism, a moderate Protestantism and a more radical Puritan Protestantism. And if you like, the federal government, there's also a growing conflict over power and sovereignty between the executive, the king, the absolute monarch, King Charles I, and the legislature, the parliament, which is trying to assert its power over taxation and all the rest of it. So there's immense division and argument in the streets and so on. And I'm going to read about a particular incident, which I think is interesting, and I hope you'll find is relevant. King Charles, at this moment in 1642, has tried to arrest some of the radical MPs who have been talking against him in Parliament. He's failed in that endeavour. He's now attempted to go to confront the authorities in London, the Corporation of London, and to have it out with them. That doesn't work very well either. So he's now on his way back to his palace. And there are crowds everywhere, there's soldiers, the coaches moving through London. In the crowd is a young ironmonger, a young tradesman called Henry Walker, who throws a pamphlet over the heads of the crowd into the royal coach. And let me just read a contemporary account, rather splendid contemporary account of what happened, and explains where the pamphlet comes from. Walker's invention, being mounted on the altitude of mischief, he plotted and contrived with a printer the said night before to write and print a perilous petition to his majesty, and borrowed the printer's wife's Bible, out of which he took his theme out of Kings chapter 12, to your tents, O Israel. There was writing and printing all night, and all the next day those libels were scattered. And when his majesty had dined and had taken his coach to return to Whitehall, Walker stood watching the king's coming by amongst the drapers in Paul's churchyard, and having one of his pamphlets in his hand, meaning to have it delivered to his majesty, but could not come at him by reason of the press of people, insomuch as Walker, most impudently saucy, threw it over the folk's head into his majesty's coach. So what's happened is, at some point the previous afternoon or evening, Henry Walker has taken it into his head to write a radical pamphlet. He has a friend who has a printing press, a physically very small printing press, no doubt, borrows his friend's wife's Bible, writes his pamphlet, they print it overnight, and by the following morning he's got hundreds, probably, conceivably even thousands, of pamphlets which they then spread across London, and one of which he manages to throw over a crowd, actually so it lands on the king's lap in his coach. And I think there's a lot going on here which is relevant. Firstly, you might say democratization. Once and not long before, the state, the king, had a monopoly on printing, essentially, and nothing got printed which wasn't officially approved. Now there are, a century or more after printing was invented, there are small mobile printing presses. Anyone can print. And secondly, speed. He can print really quickly. I mean, this is something which is conceived on one afternoon or evening, and the following morning it's spread across London. And London is is like a powder keg. It's and these pamphlets are being consumed with great interest. The next thing I want to point to is the novelty of this kind of pamphlet. They hadn't existed before. There are no newspapers at this point in English history. And I think it's fair to say that people reading something which was printed kind of assumed it must be true. If you go 2 generations later, political pamphlets are like they are today. People regard them as boring and of no use at all. They just ignore them. But at this point, they're thought to be, they must be true. What happens? Well, the answer is, a few months after this event, England descends into civil war, and a terrible civil war. The king is beheaded by Parliament. England's population is reduced through the conflict by a greater number than the First World War, the 20th century First World War. Somewhere between 3.5% and 4% of the population are killed. In Ireland, it's much, much worse than that. And looking back on it, kind of thoughtful observers, and I'm thinking in particular of Thomas Hobbes, absolutely believe that a significant reason for this conflict was the spreading of pamphlets, radical pamphlets. And indeed, in one of his books, his book about the English Civil War, Hobbes has a solution to this. I mean, Hobbes comes to believe that this kind of spreading of false information and inflammatory information caused the Civil War. And this is in Behemoth. He says, he wonders whether it wouldn't have been better if the, quote, seditious ministers, these are the radical political leaders, and presumably people like Henry Walker, which were not perhaps 1,000, so a small number of people, only 1,000 people in a population of some millions, had all been killed before they had preached. So in other words, his solution essentially is repression, that this kind of inflammatory content is so dangerous and so likely to lead to intercommunal violence that perhaps the best thing in his view would have been if the people behind it had simply been executed. Now, I don't think many people believe that that's either morally acceptable or indeed desirable, but that's Hobbes, who'd lived through this. That was his conclusion. Now let's go from 17th century England to North America right now. And I think it's fair to say, and I don't mean this in a politically biased or prejudicial way, that we're living through a moment where there's a concerted attempt to convince many members of the American public that what they've seen has not been a fair election, but is a stolen election, where there's been a vast conspiracy led by the Democrats to cheat the American people of their true choice. The American people actually voted, as it were, the legal votes would have led to a landslide for Mr. Trump. What we've seen, however, is numbers which suggest the Democrat has won. Last night, Mr. Trump gave one specific example of this. 700,000 ballots were not allowed to be viewed in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, which means, based on our great constitution, we won the state of Pennsylvania. So he's saying that because Republican observers were not allowed to observe the counting of these 700,000 ballots, they should be disallowed. Once you take 700,000 votes away from Joe Biden's total, Mr. Trump wins Pennsylvania and therefore gets the 20 electoral college votes, which would help him. It wouldn't be enough, by the way, but help him to get the votes in the electoral college to win the presidential election. Now, there are lawsuits going on in many states brought by Mr. Trump and the Republicans. There is no reason to believe that, although no election is perfect, that there's been anything like a conspiracy to steal the election, or indeed that more than at the very margins there have been any irregularities at all. No doubt there have been some when tens of millions of people vote, but there's no hard evidence. And indeed, Mr. Trump's own lawyers, when they're actually in court, are not arguing that hundreds of thousands of votes should be set aside or transferred from one candidate to another. And in most of the states where he's fighting, most of the lawsuits are not going to Mr. Trump's advantage. And it seems very, very, very unlikely that the actual result of the election is going to change. However, we've seen, and it probably began before the 2016 election, a narrative pursued by the Republicans and by Mr. Trump in particular, that you can't trust elections. Mr. Trump lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton all those years ago, but denied it. actually that was because of stolen votes, it was fake votes, or miscounting or disruption of the election. Before this current election, the 2020 election, Mr. Trump argued very strongly about mail-in ballots. You couldn't really trust mail-in ballots because of the COVID-19. There was going to be an unusual number of mail-in ballots. They wouldn't be trustworthy. So even before the election, the elements of a narrative were built, and now he's trying very hard to, if you like, bring that narrative home, not for everyone, but for his base and more broadly for people who tend to vote conservative in the country. And it's an open question about how successful that will be. I don't think it'll be successful in changing the result of the election. But I have to say, one might be, nonetheless, one could still believe that many, many Republicans will believe that what they've just sat through is a fake election, and particularly the victimhood point, that they have been cheated of the result, the true result, and they therefore had their democratic mandate taken away. They should have won, they've been cheated. And this narrative, which I believe, and I think most objective observers believe, is a false narrative. The fact that it's false doesn't mean it won't be believed, because if you would prefer to believe that's the truth, if you believe that there is a kind of conspiracy, in particular against certain, large group of the white population, that they are in all sorts of ways misunderstood and demonized and ganged up upon by the rest of by New York bankers, by minorities, and all the rest of it, it's very beguiling. I do want to say, though, in this story, we are also seeing something of a counterattack. The major digital platforms, Facebook and Twitter, have taken actually fairly serious steps to try and counteract that. You will know, for example, that Twitter has been putting a label up. The label says some or all of the content shared in this tweet is disputed and might be misleading about an election or other civil process. So that the attempt by the major platforms, imperfect no doubt, but they are now beginning to try to point out when there are disruptive and false claims made in tweets. Facebook, you may know, has actually currently banned political advertising to try and reduce the impact of, if you like, fake news and fake information. So we don't know how effective the counterattack against fake news is going to be, but it's more muscular and more organized in 2020 than it was, for example, in 2016. So let me very briefly lay out and discuss one or two solutions to all of this. Firstly, Thomas Hobbes, essentially repression. Many governments actually are very tempted to begin to go down the road of repression. I want to say I think it's both technically difficult and Ato Amare talked about this in his remarks. It also runs counter to freedom of speech. And I think in the end, freedom of speech helps democracy and it helps the public make up their mind about what's going on in their world. And freedom of speech is so precious to us, we've got to be very careful about curbing it. So I'm one of those people who believes that despite the great damage which fake news and false information and hate speech can do, we have to be very careful about using that as an excuse to seriously limit political discourse. The risk is the medicine's even worse than the disease. I do think, however, that collaboration with the major digital platforms, with initiatives like the Ethiopian Media Council, and in many ways trying to promote, trying to help to fund, trying to help in every way support legitimate news, legitimate media, is very important everywhere. And it's very encouraging to hear about progress made in Ethiopia on that score. And I do think it's a moment, and I know it takes time, and I know it's frustrating. It is a moment where the idea of working in collaboration with major digital platforms to make sure, not just in the United States and not just for a US presidential election, but in every country, to include Ethiopia, that great care is taken with the way, particularly in moments of tension, news is disseminated. I think that can be done without fundamentally conflicting with freedom of speech. It won't be perfect. The internet is such that even if fake news is driven off, as it were, official media, there is a world of the dark web where it can still be disseminated. But I do think it matters that it's pushed to the edges. I talked about the printing of pamphlets and how after a generation or two, people got used to printed pamphlets and other printed material and began to realize that just because something's printed didn't make it true. I think we will, as societies, feel habituation and kind of normalization of digital media and social media. So people take it with a pinch of salt, and its effect will become less potent, like a kind of new disease which loses its lethality and its potency over time. I think it's possible and indeed likely that will happen. But in the meantime, I think the best thing we can do is take practical steps to unite, to learn from each other, and to collaborate with the digital platforms and with the other responsible media to minimize the effects of this. And I want to just end with one other thought, which is it is incredibly important that civics, the teaching of civics, which is not the finer points of a constitution now, but it's about how you use as an individual your critical faculties to discriminate between what's true and what's false. Civics in the classroom, in universities and in other settings. So a society learns how to arm itself, defend itself, citizen by citizen, community by community, against the effects of insidious, false, divisive information is incredibly true, incredibly important. Professor Ephraim ended with a quote from the Bible. I want to just end with one of my favorite quotes from 1984, the George Orwell book, which I still believe is a very important and prophetic book, even though communism is very different now and is not a threat it seemed to him. This is a quote about truth, and it shows how this battle is not a new battle, the battle between truth and untruth. And the quote is this: "There was truth and there was untruth, and if you clung to the truth, even against the whole world, you were not mad." That's what Winston Smith, the hero of the book, is trying to do, trying to cling to the truth. And I want to say that's what we have to do. We have to recognize there is untruth, recognize there is a battle between truth and untruth, and we have to support the truth. I think the good news, though, is we live in societies where the battle can be won. And what I want to say to the symposium is, I believe that the battle against hate speech, the battle against disinformation, is a winnable battle, winnable everywhere, winnable in Ethiopia. And I want to wish not just the symposium, but Ethiopia every success in winning that battle. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. I'm sure many of us have gotten nuggets from it, very important points, and thank you for your time. Now we have collected questions, but before we go to the questions, and I will give time for my speakers to get ready to take up questions, because I have collected them and categorized them. You'll be getting your questions. Unfortunately, we do not have Dr. Abdi with us, but we have Professor Ephraim Atuamara and Mr. Thompson. They're here to answer your questions. So let's run the poll once again, because earlier we ran it and we want to run it again. so that we can see where we are, all of us, when it comes to yes, how much do you think of your voice? How much do you think of your influence on the platforms that you're on? So let's run the polls once again. Yes, so do you believe that your platform or voice on social media or other vehicles you use have influence on the public? First answer, yes, very much so. Second answer, yes, somewhat. Third answer, nope, not at all. Fourth answer, I have no idea. So you answered them earlier, but after you hear the keynote by Mr. Mark Thompson, we want to gauge how much you think of your voice. So let's see, do you believe that your platform / voice on social media or other vehicles you use have influence on the public? So you can go to the polling and you can go to the live stream and you'll find the polling there. And let's see, right, answer your questions on the polling. Okay, and let's see what you say. Okay, let's count them now. Okay, let's see once again on the screen what people say. Right. We'll get the answers in a bit. So I have collected some of the questions and on the discussion forum of the platform social, you will find some of the questions have been already answered. For example, many of you have asked about hate speech. How do we define hate speech? How do we, what do we mean by hate speech? So there are some pointers on the discussion forum. You'll find them being answered on the discussion wall. So we don't have to go through that. Yeah, let me answer one of the questions that came was for you, Mr. Thompson. I have a question for you. So Dr. Ahmed Moen has asked, thank you, Mr. Thompson, for the 3D as an example of victimization. So Dr. Ahmed asked, would you elaborate how the Iraqi diaspora misguided the American invasion to Iraq? How does this relate to a divided misinformation that can happen in African settings and in this case in Ethiopian settings? So that is directed to you, Mr. Thompson.
So I take this to be, I mean, the Iraq War and the run-up to the Iraq War and the aftermath of the Iraq War as being an example of disinformation. And I think it's quite. I do think it is quite a good example in some respects. It's not intercommunal in quite the same way, but after 9/11, there's no question that the backdrop for America, and this is any country would feel this, was of being invaded. America had never been invaded before. And there was the attack on the World Trade Center, thousands of Americans killed, a kind of out of the blue attack, not in some ways psychologically unlike Pearl Harbor in 1941. So you're attacked, you're looking for someone to blame. You do feel, and indeed America was truly a victim of a terrible attack. This was united with if you like, a background sense of unfinished business with Saddam Hussein in Iraq, which pre-existed 9/11 and was essentially unconnected. There's no real evidence at all that Iraq was involved in supporting the Al-Qaeda attack on the World Trade Center. But the two got conflated in a blurry way. And then I think you see very clear confirmation bias where, for example, Iraqi dissidents, people who are enemies of the Saddam Hussein regime, start presenting claims that there are weapons of mass destruction, and they're believed, and indeed they are, I'm afraid, reported even in mainstream American media as if they are likely to be true. At this point, Americans are feeling very patriotic. The whole country feels it's under attack, and these claims, which should have been properly interrogated, are reported as if they're true. This builds support, political support for the invasion of Iraq, and other stories and claims of facts to back it up are increased, and the result was a war which, it's still a politically fraught issue, and I don't want to give a kind of political judgment on this. The war certainly had multiple effects, many of which I think on the face of it seem incredibly negative in terms of disrupting the entire region. But I think that is quite a good example. And I think it really shows that really quite sophisticated people, sophisticated media organizations can get into an emotional environment where they actually end up promoting claims which are not true. So I do think it's a cautionary tale. And in particular, I want to say the idea that, as it were, hate speech and misinformation is a developing world issue is simply not true. In some ways, the most developed democracies on the planet, the US and the UK and other Western European countries, have seen this happening in their societies, and we seem to be as vulnerable to this kind of thing as any country on the planet.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Thompson. And we have more questions for you, but let me go to Ato Amara because there are a few questions directed to you. So Karima Mohammed asked, who should be the main actor responsible in the media to tackle the hate and fake news? And also similar to this, Tharel Jal asked, what's the role of the citizens in the current situation against the hate speech and the use of social media for the safety of the country or Ethiopia? And Professor Panos asked, what are the legal consequences of hate speech internationally and in Ethiopia? In other words, are there laws to prevent and, if need be, punish those who engage in hate speech internationally and in our country? So basically, these three participants have asked about who should be the main actor responsible in the media to tackle hate and fake speech, the role of the citizens in the current situation against hate speech in Ethiopia, and what are the legal consequences for hate speech internationally and in Ethiopia. So these are directed to you, Ato Amara.
Well, first of all, the role of the public in controlling the hate speech and all this, there are many ways the public can participate,
Okay. Can you be a little louder, please? Ato Amara, we can't hear you properly. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating. We're getting a lot of questions, and we're trying to put them together so that we can direct it to the specific panel. And also, there are other questions. Maybe I should direct other questions until Ato Amara comes back. The other question is, this is for Professor Ephraim. Prof, Dr. Ahmed asked, how do the presenters, and because you are engaged in the academia, I would like to direct this to you. How do you intend to promote knowledge of peace and dialogue in the curriculum of the studies that you're teaching in? Dialogue and peace are dialogue and peace synonymous? How does journalism and social media have accountability to figure out in the presentation that you gave? Okay, this is for most of you, but I want you to touch upon how you're including peace and dialogue in the curriculums that you developed and in the teachings that you give. Professor Ephraim, this is to you.
Well, let me say education is the basic for knowledge. I think we need to focus on proper education, particularly in much of what we're discussing today. Maybe one of the things we've not touched upon is the question of civility. Civility refers to good behavior, befitting a citizen, decency, seemliness, and patience. It refers to good citizenship. It is being courteous to others. It is having such manners that benefit the court or a prince, you might say. To be graciously polite and respectful of the position and feelings of others, the kind of complacent in respect to others. It is being respectful to others who are different from us in religion and culture and political views and so on. All of this needs to be based on education. I think from childhood through college years, we are taught the importance of civility to others. We are taught about the importance of respecting others. However, in practice, in the world in which we deal today, especially where the media has become kind of cruel, I think my good friend Mark Thompson had referred to Hobbes. Let me say, Hobbes said, homo homini lupus. Man is wolf to man. How can we get out of that? How can we go to the opposite of the arrogance and rudeness of being hateful to others? Why is it we as human beings, we are worse than animals? Well, let me say one thing about freedom of speech. You know, it's very interesting. Maybe the animal world is more peaceful because they don't have a freedom of speech. I don't know, I may be wrong in what I'm saying, but what we need to do is how to guard our tongues. And well, maybe I'll just give you one example from an Ethiopian story where the king asked his cook to prepare him the organs of the sheep that on which goodness lies. He prepared the tongue and the heart. And then he also asked him again to prepare him a meal from the parts of the animal which has which is the root of the basis or origin of evil and bad manners. And he prepared again the tongue and the heart. So that is what we have to teach from the beginning in education, in elementary school, in high school, and whatever, through the college, that we have to guard our tongues and our hearts. And education, as I said, is the basis for me as an educator. I really believe the key to much of the solution. And then that education has to be, of course, respectful of all opinions and ideas. I don't know if I'm answering that question. I have tried to do my best.
Great. Thank you so much, Professor. Yes, you have answered it. So Mr. Amara is not back yet. So Mr. Thompson, let me just give you a few more questions then. So Baruch Kasa asked, demagogy has become the norm in many developed democracies, polarizing their communities. The media has contributed to the polarization of the public in countries such as the US and the UK. Although media regulation in these countries is reasonably solid, disinformation and prejudices is prevalent. My question is whether local media regulation is an effective solution for our crisis, since the most influential media houses are headquartered in foreign countries and use pervasive platforms to reach their audiences. How do we instill integrity and accountability in their journalism? So I think you have context. We have so many media houses, particularly television, that are headquartered in other countries, and they come to they're broadcasted via the satellites here in Ethiopia, and they've been accused of spreading hate speech and fake news. So how do we regulate them? So that's what Bruh Kasa has asked, and local regulations. Your mic.
I've unmuted myself. There we go. You should be able to hear me now. It's a really interesting and profound question, actually. Two or 3 points. Firstly, demagoguery and kind of populist language is not a new thing. It emerges from the very beginnings of democracy. It's an ancient word, and actually, most of the great Athenian philosophers are skeptical or actually hostile to democracy because of the problem of demagoguery. So it's been understood that one of the problems of democracy and freedom of speech is the openness it leaves for cynical people to appeal to people's basis motives, to sow discord and all the rest of it. So it's an ancient problem. I want to just pick up on Professor Ephraim's point about civility. And I think the thing about civility can sound like it's being nice to people, which, we're all in favor of that. But how is that going to actually take heart in a politics? How are you going to get back to it? And I want to say, I think civility, things like parliamentary conventions and conventions in the media, where there are limits to what you say, you try and focus on facts and information rather than emotions, you try not to sow discord. The reason civility develops in political cultures is because it helps get the job done. It's practical, and countries run better when democratic discourse and government takes place within certain bounds of civility. And I think, honestly, in the Western world, Western democracies, after the terrible events of the Second World War, you get half a century or more of relatively consensual civil government. And I think people forgot why it was so important. And I think after 50 or 60 years of politics like that, you can feel people experimenting with more extremist language, extremist tactics, in ways which I think just show an ignorance of history. And my view, certainly my hope about the Western democracies and about all democracies is that people will remember we are civil to each other, not just because we want to be nice to each other, but because it's the best way of living together and creating peaceful, prosperous societies. And that in addition to kind of regulation, which can do so much, but it can't do everything. Regulation can't, particularly voluntary regulation, to state the obvious, only works for people who are prepared to be regulated. What I hope is the basic efficacy of civility and the extent to which people will see that effective, proper debate, proper decision-making, proper involvement by the whole community in decisions actually leads to better, happier, more prosperous countries, that basic lesson of history, repeated endlessly through history, will be learnt again. I talked about England in the 17th century. The good thing is England went through a terrible civil war. It led to reforms, the development of free speech. The pamphlets were replaced by newspapers. Newspapers were invented and were allowed. And you actually get hundreds of years of progress and development in England. You don't end up with complete anarchy and terror. Actually, eventually the country got itself into a position to essentially invent democracy and free speech after its civil war. The hope is that because we've got so many good lessons from the past, we can get back to the road of civility and good government and good, proper, constructive debate much quicker today than we did in the past.
Okay. Thank you. So, Mr. Amara, you're back. Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson. So, let me repeat the question, Ato Amara. So, Karima Mohammed asked, who should be the main actor responsible in the media to tackle the hate and fake news? Tarel Jal asked, what's the role of the citizens in the current situation against the hate speech and the use of social media for the society of the country, our country, Ethiopia? And Professor Panos asked, what are the legal consequences of hate speech internationally and in Ethiopia? In other words, are there laws to prevent and, if need be, punish those who engage in hate speech here in Ethiopia and globally? Those are the three questions directed to you, Ato Amara. You can go on.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me start with the role of the citizen. The citizen, well, the advantage it gets from the public is to get correct information so that it will be active in its own society. If the media doesn't give it correct information, the public will not play their proper role. Therefore, the public's role would be, first, to pressurize the media to be ethical and to give correct information. And when there is a wrong information and there is a damage caused, like we are seeing it everywhere, the public should be not only by the media itself, but outside the media also, the public should react. Either the media should respect the laws, or action should be taken in a proper sense. One of the reasons I tried to explain earlier that the public is having a role in the Ethiopian Media Council is because the complaints on media and the judgment on the issues of the complaint is not seen by the media itself. I'm a media man because anybody can complain against me. Even though I'm a member of the Ethiopian Media Council, I'm not going to be the judge to say I'm not wrong or something. The public is involved. As I said earlier, we have participation of 18 institutions. And we had 3 candidates from each of them, and one was selected. One is, as I said, the civil society, the Lawyers Association, the university teachers, academical institutions, and well-known intellectuals, judges, and everything are the people who see it. So if they have got any complaint, they should present their complaints and to be taken action against the media. What the ombudsman does is, without taking the media into court or into prison, they will assess the situation, the complaints, and they will say either no, they are using their freedom of the press, they didn't do anything wrong, or if they are wrong, they will tell the media, you did wrong in your own newspaper, in your television, or in your radio. You have to say, I made a mistake, I'm sorry, and you have to apologize. If it's not solved by this one, the Media Council is not the final thing to give the judgment. Anybody who has got a complaint, if they are not satisfied with what the Media Council, Ombudsman, and panelists judged, they can say, I will go to court, and they can go to court. And causing damages, hates, wars, civil wars, and all this, there are laws that could be treated by the law. What we said is, please don't go to court first, give it to the Media Council. But it doesn't mean the Media Council is the final. If anybody is not happy with what the Media Council, Ombudsman, and the panelists give as a judgment, they can go to court. It is their right. what we are saying is let's control. It's not only in Ethiopia, by the way. Internationally, there are self-controlling media councils. In fact, in Africa, in 6 countries, I have seen even the presidents and the prime ministers themselves, when they have got a complaint on the media, instead of taking the media into court, they are giving their complaints to the media council. The self-controlling bodies, they give it to the ombudsman. So what I'm saying is the public should be very active on this one, that whenever they have got a complaint, they shouldn't keep quiet. They have to come to the media council and say, correct your mistakes. Otherwise, if you don't correct it yourself, if you don't respect your own code of conduct, we're going to court. They can't say, court is the final. So they have to be very active. And through their representatives in parliament or this, they have to fight, they have to be very active. One of the problems we are seeing is, the public should be active not only in media issue, in so many issues, but in the media issue, the media council has got 3 bodies. One body is the executive body, the other body is when there is a meeting or something annually, there is like a parliament, like a government, and this one is like the justice system, the ombudsman. Those 3 structures are within the media council. Not only in Ethiopia, but all over the world, you see, the media councils have got such 3 structures. So they have to participate in the media council ombudsman body, so that the media should behave. This should be one way of their participation. If not, the other thing is go to the law, to the court, because they said the media council didn't give us the right judgment. We go there. And also, like in other issues, they have to influence. If there is a problem of law, the laws have to be strengthened. If there is any other problem, they have to have their voices through their representatives to talk the media to improve its code of conduct. This is the participation. That's why the ombudsman is not to be judged by the media itself, but non-media people have got the majority. For example, now we have chosen already the media council members, the ombudsman quotas. The main people are law experts and university experts in law. They are the ones who are the panelists, and the ombudsman are from all over opinion. So this is one of the participation, I would say, The other social media question, that came, what should be the role of, who should be playing in the social media? I think that's what Karima's question is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The main part in the media that controls is, the media has got a role to control it, In the media, as I said, the television, the radio, the newspaper, as long as they are legal and they have signed the code of conduct, that they will be ruled by that, they are the ones to control it. If anybody said, I'm not going to accept this code of conduct, he's not going to be a member, and it has nothing to do with the media council. But this media council laws and regulations, they are not drafted by us. We brought a guy called David Ward from UK. He helped us because he's the one who established so many media councils in Asia and in Africa. He helped us and everything. So instead of the government controlling the code of conduct, the media itself has to control it. This is a self-controlling body. So who has got the main part in controlling it in the media? It is the media council. That means the media itself. There is no differentiation, the television, the radio, the newspaper, or the paper. The media council itself, because everybody has signed that they will have accepted and will be ruled by the code of conduct. Now, when I said earlier, that 50 institutions are members, we have given them the document. They have to read it. They have to sign it. That means if they do that, the media itself is controlling it. There's no particular media, this one or that one. And we don't want the government to control the media, because there could be political issues, If you criticize the government, maybe they would say, you are out of code of conduct. So, as I said earlier, freedom of the press is not going to be compromised. Ethics is going to be part of the freedom of expression. At the expense of freedom of expression, there is no fake code of conduct. And in order to respect fake code of conduct, nobody is going to gamble with his freedom of expression. So all those two things will be controlled by the media itself. It could be government media or private media, but as long as they sign the code of conduct, it will be ruled by them, and we don't want to. That's what I said earlier. We have been fighting for this for 15 years, that the government should leave controlling the media code of conduct, leave it to the media itself. That's what I would say, if I understood the question,
Okay. I believe our participants have gotten the answers, but if you have answers, our platform is open, social is open for discussion, so you can continue asking questions and posting your ideas, your thoughts on the discussion wall, and also take it, export it to your social medias, different social medias, and continue the conversation. This is only the beginning. This is only the first part of the symposium. We have 3 more to come, and towards the end, we want to pledge, all of us to pledge on what we can do personally and how we can use our voices, how we can use our platforms to do this, to continue promoting and advocating for peace, particularly for media peace, because media plays a great role. From the presentations, you've heard it, from the speeches, and we also know how much power we have as media people. So let's continue the discussion, and don't forget to put the hashtag media for peace. By the way, we're trending in Ethiopia. Yes, media for peace. So that means the conversations are flowing, and keep them coming, keep them going. Okay, so let me just take it to take a few minutes to wrap it up, and I will give each one of you, our speakers, 1 minute to reflect and to wrap it up for this session. But we are going to continue the social, on the social media discussion. So let me start with Mark Thompson. So Mr. Thompson, give us your closing remark and your reflection about this whole discussion, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Meti. So look, I think what we've heard today suggests that misinformation, hate speech, divisive speech is a real issue everywhere, certainly in Ethiopia, from what I've heard, but in many other countries. But we've also heard about solutions. We've heard, I think, real progress clearly with the Ethiopian Media Council and with some of the steps that Ethiopian media is already taking, legitimate media is already taking. And as I've said, in America, we're beginning to see a counterattack against false speech. We don't yet know in that battle who's going to win, but I want to say, as you've heard, I'm hopeful broadly. I think in the end, people have common sense and have critical faculties they can use. And I certainly also want to be hopeful about Ethiopia, that it will find ways of improving the information people get, of eliminating divisive speech and finding peace again. So I wish the country and this initiative every success.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your experience and giving us all the information that we need. And we know for a fact that you're a huge supporter, so we will be sharing ideas with you some more. I believe that you will be joining us in other sessions, at least sending your ideas and using the platform. Thank you so much, Mr. Mark Thompson.
Thank you, Meti. Thank you.
All right. So second, I will give time 1 minute to Ato Amara Aragawi. Ato Amara, give us your reflection and your closing remark within a minute.
Yeah, thank you very much. By the way, in order to put this in practice, we are working with the United Nations. We have signed an agreement with UNESCO to work together. And we are also, through UNESCO, United Nations, to work together with African countries' media councils. And we are working to be a member of the World Media Council, to be members, And also we are working with UN and the Makerere University of Kenya to establish a School of Journalism. They're going to be established and not only work on ethics, but in order the journalists to know what code of conduct means, there is going to be a School of Journalism, which is going to start very soon. And besides that, we are organizing a training in so many trainings. For example, in regions, we are going to have to go to 5 regions to train on what code of conduct means to the media. And the French embassy here has already given us 100,000 euros for training for 2 years. So it's not only creating the media council, but training the journalists on how to behave, how to report without hate speech and something. A big training program and courses are going to start very soon. And through this, we are going to make a difference, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ato Amara. This is a great news for journalists and also for journalism as a profession. And with this, I believe we'll be pushing the fight against fake news, hate speech, and disinformation. Thank you very much. Now let me come to you, Professor Ephraim Yitzhak. This is your moment to wrap it up and to give us your closing remark. And we really appreciate your time.
Thank you so very, very much for the wonderful work you have done today. And I also thank Mark, the distinguished Honorable Mark Thompson, and the distinguished friend Amare for having shared with them this forum. I know at the beginning you said I was going to speak about peace. That is what I speak about most of my life. I've given many, many, many lectures on peace. Instead, I decided to write a letter, a friendly letter to the media, because I think we cannot have peace unless we speak peace and write peace and speak about peace. So that's why I chose to speak about the media. And then in the answer I gave, I focused on education. Let me say why education is really the key to a lot of things that we deal with. I remember when I was a graduate student at Harvard, I became very friendly with a man called Edward Bernays, who is usually called the father of public relations. And he used to say that too, that in a way the media, like he started the whole idea of public relations. He used to say you can educate people to do the right thing or the wrong thing, or to buy whatever you want or to sell whatever you want. And that is why education is so central. And then I'll add one more story. I remember during the first, I think, World War, or after that, the League of Nations wrote a letter to Mr. Freud to ask him, and Einstein, to give an answer about what is really the solution to world peace. It's very interesting. Again, Freud emphasized on education. He tried to say, and that is where we really have a problem, and that we have to deal with. That Freud said, I am a pessimist. It is the problem is human nature, and we cannot what he calls the evil instinct and the good instinct. But Einstein, however, answered by saying, no, we must educate people. We must be very, very positive. We must focus on education. And education and also has another arm, religion. Religion is also a form of educating people. I think Jean Baudin said that education contributed to establishing stability, whatever he meant. my own feeling is that we have to educate everyone, and in particular the media. It is human nature, unless we mold the character of a person, and that comes through education, and especially focusing on education that teaches love your neighbor as yourself, or even love your enemy. And so I'll conclude by reciting one verse from the prophets and one verse from William Blake. The prophets said, maybe I should say it in Hebrew, Lo yissa goy al goy heref, lo yilmadu od milchama. I'll translate it. Nations will not raise arms against nations. They'll never learn war again. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. And it's my prayer that we beat today our artilleries into tractors, or our bombs into electric lights, that we have to educate people. And the media can play a very important role in education. And then my last quotation, or a little verse from William Blake, who says, and all must love the human form, in heathen, Turk, or Jew, where mercy, love, and pity dwell. There God is dwelling too. And I hope that our media people will be focusing on love, peace, so that is where God dwells. We are here in this world for a short time in a hotel. We check in, we check out. So while we are in this hotel, let us teach people, educators, media people, how to live together in peace, respect each other, love each other, and so on. This is a whole, my great prayer, my hope. May the Lord Almighty help us to find the true path. Amen.
Amen. Amen to that. Thank you so much, Professor Ephraim Yitzhak. It has been an incredible session. So all participants, viewers that you are watching us across the platforms, thank you so very much. We have participants from across the globe, different countries, and we really appreciate your time. I believe you found this to be very informative and useful. And if you believe so, please share this link, because it's going to be on YouTube. Share it across your social media, your networks, so that more people will come on board on this dialogue. And also next week we'll be coming with more prominent people in their area of expertise. We'll be having, we'll be hearing about the role of media in the Rwandan genocide, because media has played a great role. So we will be hearing from Rwanda, and we'll also hear our panelist, Ambassador Johnny Carson, a lifetime diplomat, will be joining us next week. And from Ethiopia Czech, and the fact checker, Elias Meseret, is going to join us. So we'll be talking about fake news and the role of media in hate speech, spreading hate speech, particularly in the case of Rwanda. And until then, you can continue your discussions, because on social there is a discussion wall. You can put your ideas, you can discuss, and there is one question that we want you to answer on that platform. And also, wherever you are watching this from, answer it for yourself, because it's very important. We want to make impact, and we want us to be, we want us to take actions right now. So to all attendees, what would be your commitment, if any, to eradicate information that leads to conflict? Answer these questions, discuss it on our discussion wall on social, and also share it on your social media. You can export it from here. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week. Until then, continue the conversation with a hashtag Media for Peace. Symposium on our symposium for today is over, but we'll be coming next week, because as I said, this is a 4-week session, and we will join you next week. And make sure that you do not spread hate speech, disinformation, and fake news, because we all have that power to do so, and we all have the power to stop it with us. Thank you. I am Metti Shwaye Yilma, and we really appreciate PDCI, Ethiopian Media Council, and Flawless Events for bringing this together. Until I see you next week, have a good one.